Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I wanted to talk about AI and decentralized AI specifically, because in the future I've got a couple AI tokens that I want to talk about. But before we go into that, I figured it would be a good idea to kind of give an overview of kind of the decentralized AI market overall. So let's go on ahead and dive right in. So looking at CoinGecko, we can see they actually have a category that is just AI tokens. And so you can see a total market cap, we're at about just shy of 23 billion. Leading the way, we've got Near Protocol, ICP, Artificial Superintelligence Alliance. This was the combination between Fetch, AGIX, and one other one that I'm currently blanking. But then we've got Tau, Render, AKASH, Singular. This is one that I believe merged into Fetch. So this one I think is no longer an active token. We've got Arkham. Going down, there's plenty of AI tokens, and as you can see, like, there's actually a decent chunk above the $1 billion market cap, which means you've got a pretty good set of like AI tokens that are relatively valuable in the space. And so one of the things that I think is important and interesting about decentralized AI is the ability to essentially have all of this compute done asynchronously around the world, and it also kind of allows us to lean on more of the decentralized equipment network as well. So I think it lowers the barrier to entry for some of these AI models to actually come into being. So that to me, I think is a really good thing. One thing that also I think is something worth considering, kind of going into like an AI thought experiment, is if these AI agents, I'm not sure kind of how much people are familiar with AI, but one of the more popular concepts that has kind of developed recently is this thing called an AI agent. And what an AI agent does is, let's say I want to book a vacation, and I go into ChatGPT and I say, hey, I want to book a week-long cruise to the Mediterranean, and I live in LA. Okay, well, cool, you can do that, and then, well, theoretically, in one day you would be able to do this, and then what you could do is the AI agent would go in. It would pick a cruise, maybe it'd come back with a couple of options for you, give you price and time and all this, that, and whatever else. It would also book your flights if you had to like lay over somewhere or maybe stay a day or two before you wanted to stay a day or two before. It'd book your hotels. Essentially, it would go and do everything like a travel agent would do. It just would do it automatically using AI, right? Well, that's cool and all, but when it comes time for it to actually book all of this stuff for you, it needs money, right? And currently, one of the things that I think is really interesting about crypto is kind of purpose made for this, right? Like, crypto is already a decentralized, widely spread out financial network. You don't need any permission to, be hooked into the back end of some trip booking site system. You just pay stuff, right? And so AI agents, I think, would actually be really successful on a crypto network, because when you spin up these AI agents, all you can do is you just deposit some crypto into their wallet, and then they'll go and do all these things and book your trip for you and all that stuff and email you the confirmation. This is all completely doable and probably could be doable right now with crypto. Mapping this back onto Web 2, there's definitely going to be, I think, a lot more complexity there, because you're going to have to somehow tie these AI agents into a banking system that exists, but it doesn't exist in the same way that like crypto does, right? Like, crypto is there for everybody to see and everybody to interact on. The banking system is there, but it's kind of like arbitrarily held up by these different governments, and sometimes governments communicate, sometimes they don't. Like, there's just a lot more complexity in terms of having an AI agent navigate through that type of territory. So the next thing I want to show, kind of speaking to this, is Coinbase actually, this was posted just very recently. Coinbase actually sees its first crypto transaction between AI agents, which is really interesting, because this means that AI agents are now starting to transact with each other, and potentially you could have this entire digital economy that theoretically could leave humans out of doing most of it, right? And so this is something where, again, if you're going to have this, you need some sort of ability to control the outputs and also give a framework for these agents to interact on that aren't just trying to hook it up into what I would consider an antiquated financial system anyway. Crypto seems to make a lot of sense for a lot of this stuff. So anyway, this is kind of interesting because basically they used an AI agent to use tokens to buy other tokens, which is really interesting. And this is, I would say, kind of a very, very basic level of what we would expect them to be able to do eventually at some point in the future, which is really cool. So the other thing I wanted to look at really quickly before we move into our last article is kind of, this is like a compare and contrast of centralized versus decentralized AI. So as some of us are probably already aware, some of the challenges with centralized AI is it's got limited data access. If you have a centralized AI model, your data kind of depends on the financial resources that you have, or potentially the company that you have. Google is, if Google is using their own, like developing their own AI model, and they're only using Google data for this, they're essentially going to have a bias in a sense, because what if there's only a certain type of people that interact on Google, and another certain type of people only interact on Apple, and another certain type of people somehow or whatever like do the majority of their interactions with Facebook, right? Like you've kind of siloed your data to only a certain like proportion of the audience or the general population, which is going to produce some maybe like phantom guesses or some like biases that may not necessarily reflect the truth. So other than that, same thing, we've got, these inflexible models. People are essentially trying to brute force their way into a all-encompassing model with this limited information that they have. And part of doing that is they're kind of, I think, trying to shoehorn their models a little bit in a way that's not as flexible as they really could be, where if you had a wider participation of data and people, then that may not necessarily be needed. The last one we have is lack of transparency and accountability. So, this one I think kind of goes without saying. If somebody is developing their AI model in secret, you have no idea what they're doing to the model, what they're putting into it, anything like that. So decentralized AI helps with some of this stuff, right? One of the big things would be data markets and essentially commoditizing data so you actually can get a full sense of what is going on with data. After that, you've got multi-dimensional models, which essentially kind of, it continues to model off of itself as it continues to generate data, which again would be possible through decentralized AI because a lot of the data that's produced then gets put onto this network that you can then use and take advantage of. After that, you have verifiable AI, which is really interesting because one of the I've got a pretty decent amount of experience in like the tech and startup space, and so one thing that I have seen is there are a lot of startup companies that use AI. And one of the things I like to say about this is, the AI that they're using is actual intelligence, because they don't actually have any sort of AI model or anything even closely resembling an AI model. They just are wanting to call it AI because it's the new flashy thing. So, this is something I think would be really interesting, is having a verifiable AI to, like, is it actually AI, or is this just somebody saying that it's AI and it's really not? So, that's something that I think is really cool as well. The other thing is also, exchanges for AI solutions. This is kind of, in my opinion, this is where you get kind of like that AI agent exchange, and then you can essentially kind of go to different AI agents to have things done for you. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting is, this might be a little bit far afield, but if you get to a point where AI starts creating other AI, well, who owns that created AI? And if this created AI is generating value, does it keep a profit? And if so, where does that profit go? Does that AI bot now like have spending power? And if so, what's it going to spend its money on, right? Like there's a lot of really interesting questions that need to be answered kind of when we go further into the future on some of these generative AI type solutions. I think it's really interesting. So some of the opportunities in decentralized AI would be, the democratization of innovation. Essentially, all this means is like, right now we've got Google, Facebook, Apple, Twitter AI. Like, we've got these like really big, massive decentralized AI models essentially coming from companies that have access to all of the like important data in the world. This would essentially allow innovation to be more competitive and more free market because the data now is just there and people can develop on it and find interesting and unique solutions as they are able to find them. So obviously, this would unleash trillions in economic value because more people are able to participate, and also more real world challenges that are able to be solved because there's more eyes and more hands working on it. So Anyway, that's kind of a compare and contrast between decentralized and centralized AI. The last thing I wanted to look at is, this is a little bit more of a technical type of thing, but I figured it was worth covering just to kind of dive a little bit more deep into decentralized AI and potentially how it could work. And so this is actually written by a guy. He's actually the CEO of this DEPIN project called ORT. I actually happen to know a lot of people who work on the ORT project, and so I have a bit of a personal connection to these guys. I don't own any ORT tokens or anything, like I don't. But I'm just saying I know these people, and they are definitely very intelligent people, and I think they're building something that makes a lot of sense. And so one of the things that they're looking to do and solve with kind of this like decentralized compute type of things is, how do you make sure, because if you're incentivizing people to contribute data, and by the nature of it being decentralized, the data that you have is incomplete, how do you essentially get around the game theory issue of like, well, I've got, only 1% of this piece of like data request, but I've got, 4% of this other data piece request. I'm going to prioritize the 4% because I get paid more for that. So what they are doing is they're implementing what they're calling proof of honesty, which is the POH. If we just kind of read right down through here, it says, from a game theoretic perspective, nodes allocate resources based on local knowledge and self-interest, leading to suboptimal social outcomes and limited network performance, which essentially is kind of what I explained earlier. If you're going to do what makes you the most money, whether that makes the most sense for the network. The POH protocol, leveraging blockchain technology, incentivizes service providers with cryptocurrencies proportional to their network contributions. For example, in decentralized AI, the dataset of an AI model can be stored in multiple geographically distributed service providers. In other words, a service provider usually stores the pieces of various datasets from different users in the network. Assume a service provider receives a file downloading request from one user in the network. When the user gets all of the pieces of the dataset from these service providers, the crypto reward will be proportionally shared by the service providers who contribute the dataset pieces. By doing so, the Proof of Honesty Consensus Protocol incentivizes the service providers to cache frequently accessed dataset pieces in proximity and deploy in a zone with high and reliable bandwidth. As a result, all service providers are independently working towards a globally optimal goal, that is, Proof of Honesty optimizes the network topology and resource allocation in a decentralized manner. So, essentially, the way I explained it initially was, if they're essentially trying to incentivize people to do what makes the most sense for the network overall, which also includes storing more frequently accessed data in places that are easier to be more frequently accessed, right? Like if you're trying to, go to the pantry and you like to have, chips 8 times a day, and you like to have, I don't know, some healthy thing, Fig Newtons once a week, it would not make sense for you to put Fig Newtons in the front of the pantry and chips in the back. You would put it the other way because chips are going to be more accessed than, the Fig Newtons are. So that's essentially what they're trying to do with data as well. And so what we can see down here, so this is the last piece I wanted to go over, and this is essentially how they're planning on using proof of honesty to make sure that people are behaving correctly. So, what we can see here is security and trust are paramount in the digital era, especially for AI computing tasks outsourced to an unknown service provider in a decentralized AI network. Proof of honesty is a vigilant guardian in AI computing, ensuring that outsourced tasks are completed accurately and honestly. It employs a mechanism inspired by law enforcement's use of entrapment, discreetly incorporating test tasks or phishing tasks among real tasks. If a provider attempts to cut corners, the POH officers, some service providers are assigned as officers to create and distribute phishing tasks in the network, catches them in the act using these phishing tasks. This deters dishonesty and secures the process without the need for constant oversight. So essentially they're trying to build in like some trapdoors for these people to, hopefully get caught on if they're being dishonest, to keep the network operating at its most efficiently. So anyway, hopefully this was an interesting video, kind of diving in a little bit more to the nuances of decentralized AI and just AI more generally, and how AI, I think, could have a truly crucial role in the development of the crypto space, just because I do think AI agents kind of were made for crypto, and crypto is made for AI agents. So, this is something that I'm really excited and interested to see kind of how it develops over the next several years, particularly with some of these decentralized AI models that are starting to get spun up on chain. So anyway, if you found this information useful, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out. I do have a relatively new channel, so I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of October. And so if you found the information useful and think I've earned it, please do leave me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out. Also, I do reply to all my comments, so if you have anything you'd like, you want to say, whether it's feedback, comments, questions, anything like that, please just drop a comment. I will reply. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.